guys, this is Haley and Caitlin here on Channel 1 News. Today we're going to go over some very interesting topics.
Yes, that's right. Today we're going to explore how ecosystems connect with cellular respiration.
You might think that's impossible, but we're here to prove you wrong.
Here's Alyssa with her topic.
Hi, so to start things off today, we're going to talk about ecology. Now you might say, but isn't this biology? Well, yes it is, but ecology is a big part of biology. Ecology is a study of organisms and their environment. So in order to learn about the life of organisms, you have to learn about where they live and how they interact. So when you go into a grocery store and you see something that says it's organic, you think, oh, so it's good for me. Well, organic in the science world means made with carbon. Many things in our environment are considered organic compounds, and most living organisms rely on organic compounds for energy. Have you ever heard of carbohydrates? Yep, they're an organic compound. So are lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. Nucleic acids are basically RNA and DNA, which contain the heredity in your body. Lipids are stuff like fats, oils, and waxes. Organic compounds are everywhere.
Beneath the surface of organic compounds, we have millions of cells, or otherwise the building blocks of every living thing. There are two main types of cells, animal cells and plant cells. Let's break it down even farther. Animal cells contain a cell membrane that protects the cell by controlling what enters and exits, just like a bodyguard. They have a nucleus that controls cell functions, like a brain. Lysosomes can contain digestive enzymes that help break down food. They're also known as suicide cells because they can kill the entire cell if it is diseased. Think of it as a bouncer that breaks up fights. The ER, or endoplasmic reticulum, modifies transport proteins. Ribosomes manufacture proteins kind of like a factory does. Golgi bodies package and ship material out of this cell just like the UPS do. Vacuoles store food, water, and waste, kind of like our closets when they pile up with junk, but we still have necessary items in there. Mitochondria are involved in energy production for the cell, like an outlet. That's a lot, huh? Well, let's get simpler. Plant cells have a cell wall and a cell membrane. The cell wall is made mostly of cellulose, which is a carbohydrate and an organic compound. It cannot be digested and exits our body as waste. We refer to it more commonly as fiber. It has one large vacuole, so think of it as a big closet. They contain chloroplast, which carries out the process of photosynthesis, just like lotion is needed to keep our bodies moisturized. The substance that makes it green is chlorophyll, or to us it'd probably be tanning lotion that makes us orange. Now that we've learned about the basic structure of cells, we should find out what they do. Diffusion. One function of cells is to diffuse through needed materials into them so that the body can feed off of its supply. Let's take a trip through the cell membrane, shall we? There are two categories of diffusion, passive transport and active transport. Passive transport does not require energy and moves molecules from high to low concentration. There are three processes dealing with passive transport: simple diffusion, osmosis, and facilitated diffusion. Vocab time! A phospholipid bilayer is a semi-permeable layer of the cell membrane. Phospho refers to the phosphate group that is hydrophilic or water-loving. Lipid is hydrophobic or repels water. Diffusion occurs until equilibrium is reached. Osmosis is the diffusion of water through the phospholipid bilayer. Facilitated diffusion is for larger molecules like glucose. Molecules diffuse through transmembrane proteins called integral proteins that are located in the cell membrane with the phospholipid bilayer. Active transport. It requires energy in the form of ATP, or adenosine triphosphate. There are two types of processes dealing with active transport. One is carrier-mediated transport, which is the NAK+ pump, and two is the vesicle-mediated transport, which is endo- and exocytosis. The sodium-potassium pump diffuse to reach equilibrium and needs integral proteins to function. It's just like how a battery works. When the negative and positive energy are equal on each side of the battery, it dies. This is how our nerves work, and we don't want to turn on the sodium-potassium pump unless it is needed to send a message because our nerves will die. The vesicle-mediated transport is made up of endocytosis and exocytosis. Endocytosis is a process where cells absorb molecules. They do this through phagocytosis, or cell eating, and or pinocytosis, which is cell drinking. Exocytosis is the process of removing molecules from the cell. They do this through secretion, when cells release important products like hormones and mucus, and excretion, when cells release waste like sweat.
The cardiovascular system is a very important system. It contains the heart, blood, and blood vessels. Everyone knows that humans need oxygen to survive and function. We also already know that we need oxygen in our bloodstream. But do you ever really know how it gets there? As we breathe in oxygen, it travels down into the lungs. First, it starts out in the trachea, then into the bronchus, and finally into the bronchioles. This is where oxygen meets the capillaries. This is the most important part of oxygen exchange. Gases in the alveoli and the blood in the capillaries exchange. This is related to the earlier topic of diffusion. The air is entering the blood and the blood is entering the alveoli. These capillaries are also have to be very thin in order for diffusion to occur. Alright, so we've learned about cells, diffusion. Now it's time to learn about digestion. First off, digestion is the breaking down of foods. It's done chemically and mechanically. First, the food is chewed up and grinded up by the teeth. Then it's swallowed and travels down to the esophagus. It's pushed through the esophagus and enters the stomach. When it enters the stomach, it's surrounded by mucus of the stomach walls. Now the food is going to enter the small intestine. As it's traveling through the small intestine, it meets the duodenum. The duodenum breaks down the food and absorbs nutrients. This is where the villi comes into play. The villi finger-like projections are attached to the walls. It absorbs most of the nutrients left over. Ever wonder how the nutrients you eat every day gets into your blood? Well, the villi uses active and passive transport, kind of like diffusion, to transfer into the blood system. When the nutrients are dispersed into the areas of our body through that. It's as simple as that.
Hi, I'm Caitlin, and I'm going to explain how cellular respiration and fermentation relate. Both fermentation and cellular respiration are ways a cell can produce energy. Fermentation makes 2 ATP molecules per glucose molecule, while cellular respiration makes 36 per glucose. When glucose is broken down with oxygen, it's called aerobic cellular respiration. When it does not use oxygen, it's called fermentation. Cellular respiration is the most efficient way of ATP production and has 3 steps, starting with glycolysis, which is the breakdown of glucose molecules. The production of glycolysis is the product of glycolysis is 2,3-carbon pyruvate, 2 NADH, and 2 ATP, which is transported to the mitochondria, and the ATP is used to make energy. The following step is the Krebs cycle, where the molecules are broken down further to where the product is 1 3-carbon pyruvate molecule, 4 NADH, and 1 ATP molecule. The last step in cellular respiration is the electron transport chain, where 3 ATP is made for each NADH, and the hydrogen from NADH is passed to the oxygen, and NAD plus returns to the glycolysis and Krebs cycle to restart the process. Fermentation relates because the first step in the fermentation process is glycolysis. After glycolysis occurs the 2 common forms of fermentation, lactic acid and alcoholic. The fermentative pathway is where the process of fermentation decides which form to take. Lactic acid fermentation occurs when pyruvate is converted to lactic acid and is normally found in the muscles of humans and animals.